Imagine walking down the aisle in a fairy tale Hollywood wedding completely unaware your marriage was a studio-engineered lie. During Tinseltown's golden age, beloved icons like Judy Garland and Angela Lansbury were caught in heartbreaking illusions to protect massive secrets. Today we step behind the velvet curtain to reveal the untold stories of famous women who had no clue their husbands were gay. Phyllis Gates and Rock Hudson, Hollywood's ultimate cover-up. In November 1955, when Rock Hudson and Phyllis Gates hastily tied the knot at a quiet Santa Barbara motel, it wasn't a Hollywood fairy tale, it was a high-stakes corporate merger. Hudson was Universal Pictures' ultimate leading man, a towering heartthrob whose deeply guarded secret was on the brink of a ruinous tabloid exposure. To neutralize the threat, his legendary agent Henry Wilson deployed the ultimate mid-century PR shield, a respectable, picture-perfect wife. He found his candidate right outside his office door, his own secretary, Phyllis Gates. Decades later, Gates remains one of Tinseltown's most debated figures. Was she an innocent small-town girl swept off her feet, entirely blind to her husband's true sexuality, or was she a savvy insider who knowingly signed onto a lucrative, unwritten non-disclosure agreement? Historians remain divided, but the reality of that brief, high-pressure lavender marriage was undeniably suffocating. Gates was thrust into the spotlight to play the devoted housewife for the flashbulbs, hosting dinner parties while keeping up a flawless facade. Behind closed doors lay only emotional distance and long absences. When they divorced just 3 years later, Hudson emerged with his heroic masculine image untarnished, continuing his storied career. Gates, however, quietly retreated into the shadows. She spent the rest of her life dogged by whispers of her complicity, forever tethered to a massive Hollywood secret she was either tricked into keeping or hired to protect. Princess Margaret, the royal illusion. In 1960, over 300 million viewers tuned in for the first globally televised royal wedding. Princess Margaret's marriage to Anthony Armstrong Jones was celebrated as a modern fairy tale, a grand public relations victory for a monarchy still reeling from forbidding her earlier romance with Peter Townsend. Armstrong Jones, a charming bohemian photographer, brought a welcome splash of color to the dusty palace gates. Yet beneath the grandeur lay a quiet, devastating tragedy. Unlike Hollywood, which methodically engineered cover marriages to safeguard its stars, Buckingham Palace suffered from pure institutional arrogance. Court officials naively assumed anyone brought into the royal fold would instantly fall in line, completely failing to vet the man behind the lens. Armstrong Jones moved fluidly through London's avant-garde, sexually fluid underworld. Raised in gilded isolation, Margaret mistook his rebellious flair for harmless eccentricity, completely unaware of his entrenched double life. As his private affairs with both men and women surfaced, their home became a psychological battlefield. Snowden grew bitter toward royal life, isolating Margaret at Kensington Palace and subjecting her to petty, cruel mind games. Unlike a Hollywood star who could quietly negotiate a way out when a marriage broke down, Margaret was trapped by her duty to the crown. For years, she stood on palace balconies, smiling, waving, and preserving the facade of a perfect royal family, while absorbing the bitter humiliation of a husband who used her crown to elevate himself only to resent her for it. Judy Garland, the price of stardom. When Judy Garland married director Vincente Minnelli in 1945, MGM studio chief Louis B. Mayer proudly walked her down the aisle. Captured in glowing press photos, it looked like a fairy tale. In reality, it was a corporate handoff. MGM didn't just control Garland's brutal working hours and pill regimen, they manufactured her entire world. For an exhausted young woman isolated by fame, Minnelli seemed like a safe, creative anchor. MGM executives enthusiastically pushed the romance. What they conveniently omitted was Minnelli's well-known history in New York's theater scene, where he lived openly with men. Hollywood demanded a wholesome narrative, and Judy was cast as the unsuspecting bride in his PR cover story. Garland entered the marriage expecting the happy ending her own film sold to America. Instead, she found a cold, deteriorating illusion that finally shattered when she reportedly walked in on her husband with another man. The tragedy went far beyond a single broken heart. The studio system had conditioned Judy to believe her worth was tied strictly to her public image, leaving her uniquely vulnerable to men who needed her star power as a social shield. Decades later, her fourth husband, Mark Herron, would also leave her for a man. Garland wasn't simply unlucky in love. She was the victim of a ruthless Hollywood machine that weaponized marriage for public relations, forcing a legendary star who gave her soul to the audience to return home to a hollow, Amanda Blake. The ultimate tragedy of the era. For nearly 2 decades, Amanda Blake embodied a very specific kind of American resilience. As Miss Kitty Russell on Gunsmoke, she played a shrewd, fiercely independent saloon owner who always had everything under control. Yet her real-life final marriage demonstrated how even the most beloved stars could be fatally undone by the dark secrets of the era. In 1984, Blake married her fourth husband, Mark Spaeth, a prominent Austin city councilman. Seeking stability after stepping away from Hollywood, she found in Spaeth a respected, successful partner. What he never disclosed, however, was his private life as a gay man. In conservative 1980s Texas politics, coming out meant instant ruin. Blake unknowingly became the ultimate public validator for his conventional facade. The cost of this deception wasn't just a broken heart, it was fatal. At the height of the AIDS crisis, intense public stigma forced men like Spaeth to go to extreme lengths to conceal their health. When Spaeth died just a year after their wedding from AIDS-related complications, the tragic truth collapsed on Blake. Having entered the marriage completely in the dark, Blake had contracted the virus. She quietly carried the physical toll until her death in 1989. Amanda Blake's story remains the harshest reminder of enforced silence, a societal pressure so toxic that a desperate need to protect an image ultimately cost an unsuspecting woman her life. Angela Lansbury, the note that changed everything. At just 19 years old, Angela Lansbury walked into her home to find a brief, devastating note left on the table by her husband, actor Richard Cromwell. He was gone, his belongings packed, leaving behind a single sentence stating that their marriage could no longer continue. There had been no fiery arguments and no warning, just an abrupt, absolute exit that left the young actress in shock. Lansbury had married Cromwell in 1945. She was a fresh British import riding high on an Oscar nomination for her stunning debut in Gaslight. Cromwell, at 35, was a handsome, polished Hollywood fixture. To the naive teenager, he represented stability, elegance, and worldly sophistication. What she couldn't see was that his charming persona was a carefully staged performance. Unlike the high-profile studio-engineered unions designed to protect box office idols, Cromwell's marriage was a deeply personal shield. He needed a respectable, bright young wife to quiet the persistent industry rumors about his private life as a gay man. Sheltered by her youth, Lansbury later candidly admitted that the thought never even crossed her mind. Finding that note completely shattered her world. She hadn't just lost a husband, she realized she had been performing in a play without ever reading the script. Yet, in a town driven by scandal, Lansbury chose grace over bitterness. She protected his secret, remaining close friends with Cromwell until his death in 1960. That early heartbreak taught the future Murder, She Wrote star a profound lesson about the vast, haunting distance between Hollywood's glamorous facade and the complicated truths hidden behind it. Charlotte Rae, the shattered illusion. For a quarter of a century, Charlotte Rae shared a marriage that seemed entirely immune to Hollywood volatility. Long before she captured America's heart as the wise, warm-hearted Mrs. Garrett on The Facts of Life, she and composer John Strauss built a life together, raising 2 sons, collaborating creatively, and weathering the tough entertainment industry side by side. A 25-year marriage isn't a hasty PR stunt, it is an entire lifetime. That durability made the ultimate breakdown of her reality all the more devastating. The truth didn't come from a tabloid leak. It came directly from Strauss, who finally confessed his attraction to men and proposed an open marriage to explore his repressed identity. Ray was completely blindsided. Being the wife who genuinely had no idea for 2.5 decades causes a terrifying psychological reckoning once the truth is spoken. A late-in-life revelation doesn't just alter your future, it retroactively rewrites your past. Every quiet dinner and family milestone is suddenly viewed through a painful new lens. Refusing to play a supporting role in a modified version of her own life, Ray filed for divorce. Yet despite the deep betrayal of time and trust, she never mounted a public crusade against her ex-husband. Instead, the beloved actress who spent her career offering warm guidance to television's youth was left to privately rebuild her life, absorbing the heartbreaking truth that 25 years of marriage doesn't guarantee you truly know the person sleeping beside you. Carol Channing, the 41-year illusion. At 77 years old, Broadway legend Carol Channing filed for divorce, pulling back the curtain on a staggering 41-year illusion. She didn't just walk away from her husband and manager Charles Lowe, she publicly dismantled 4 decades of systemic deception. To the world, Lowe was the devoted husband, managing her spectacular career through thousands of performances of Hello, Dolly. He controlled her schedule, her finances, and her public image. But behind closed doors, that professional insulation doubled as a personal prison. In her divorce filings, Channing revealed a stark reality: they had lived as total strangers, having intimate relations only once or twice at the very beginning of their union. For decades, she accepted his cold deflections, assuming their exhausting work schedule left no room for romance. The facade finally shattered when Channing discovered severe financial irregularities. The man managing her millions had allegedly been draining her fortune to fund a secret private life with other men. The devastation was profound. Her absolute trust in Lowe's authority had led her to ignore the glaring emotional void in her own home. Waking up in the twilight of life to realize your lifelong partner viewed you less as a wife and more as a profitable client is a heartbreaking betrayal. At an age meant for peaceful reflection, the Broadway icon was forced to confront the painful truth that the man managing her spotlight had kept her entirely in the dark. Janet Gaynor and Adrienne Hollywood's mutual shield. In 1939, when Janet Gaynor, the very first recipient of the Academy Award for Best Actress, married MGM's most celebrated costume designer, Gilbert Adrian, the press painted a picture-perfect Hollywood fairy tale. Adrian was the visionary who dressed Greta Garbo and created Dorothy's legendary ruby slippers for The Wizard of Oz. Together, they stood at the absolute pinnacle of studio royalty. Yet behind the polished magazine, Spread's film historians view their decades-long union not as a cruel deception, but as the quintessential lavender marriage, a savvy, strategic alliance forged for mutual protection. Gaynor was no naive young bride. She was a seasoned industry veteran who understood that Adrian's homosexuality was an open secret among Tinseltown's elite. Crucially, Gaynor also navigated persistent, well-documented rumors surrounding her own private life and her lifelong, intimate bond with Broadway legend Mary Martin. In a rigidly conservative era, a conventional marriage shield was something both stars desperately needed. Far from being a victim of studio manipulation, Gaynor was an equal willing partner in a high-stakes survival strategy. Together, she and Adrian crafted a remarkably successful domestic life. They raised a son, hosted glamorous dinner parties, and presented a united front that shielded them from the era's ruthless gossip columnists. They maintained a genuinely loving, supportive partnership that lasted until Adrian's passing in 1959. Their story challenges the simple narrative of victim and villain, proving that during the golden age of cinema, the most complex and demanding roles stars ever played were often the ones performed entirely off-camera. Thank you for watching today's video. If you find the content interesting or useful, don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss the latest videos. Your support is the biggest motivation for us to continue creating better quality content every day. What do you think about today's topic? Leave a comment below so we can discuss it together. See you in the next video. Have a great day.